The bitter chill of the evening air bit through Hannah Osborne's tattered dress as she huddled by the dying embers of what had once been her family's home. Ashes smeared her face and clung to her long auburn hair, the remnants of everything she'd ever known, now nothing more than dust and charred fragments beneath her bare feet. It was 1876, and the promise of a new life in Colorado territory had turned to tragedy in a single night of flames and terror. Hannah pulled her knees tighter to her chest, the October wind cutting through the thin fabric of her dress. 22 years of life had not prepared her for such desolation. The ranch raid had been swift and merciless. The outlaws took what they wanted: horses, money, supplies, and set fire to the rest. Her parents, God rest their souls, hadn't made it out of the burning house. That was 3 days ago. Since then, Hannah had been existing in a state of numb disbelief, sleeping among the ashes of her former life, too shocked to move on, too broken to know where to go. She had tried cleaning herself the first day, using water from the creek that ran behind what remained of the barn, but without soap or fresh clothes, the effort had been futile. The ashes kept clinging to her, as if determined to remind her of all she had lost. Night was falling fast now, the sun already disappearing behind the jagged peaks of the distant mountains. Another night of cold, of hunger, of bitter memories awaited her. Hannah closed her eyes, wishing that sleep would take her quickly. The sound came gradually, the steady rhythm of horse hooves and the creak of wagon wheels. Hannah didn't move. Maybe whoever it was would pass by. Maybe they wouldn't see her huddled form among the blackened timber. Maybe they would be kind if they did. Or maybe they would be like the men who had destroyed everything she loved. The sounds grew louder, then slowed. Hannah heard the wagon come to a stop. A man's voice called out, "Hello there, anyone alive?" She remained still, uncertain whether to reveal herself. Footsteps approached cautiously, boots crunching on the charred debris. "Sweet Jesus," the man muttered, his voice carried on the wind. Hannah opened her eyes to find a tall figure standing a few yards away, silhouetted against the dusky sky. He was dressed in typical cowboy attire: denim pants, a worn leather vest over a cotton shirt, and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his eyes. "Madam," his voice was deep but gentle. "Are you hurt?" Hannah tried to speak, but her throat was dry from days without proper water. She managed a raspy whisper. "I'm alive." The man approached slowly, as if afraid she might bolt like a frightened deer. As he came closer, Hannah could make out his features in the fading light: a strong jaw covered in several days' stubble, kind blue eyes, and a concerned expression on his weather-beaten face. "My name's Noah Rawlins," he said, crouching down to her level. "I've got a wagon and some supplies." "Let me help you, madam." Hannah stared at him, trying to determine if he posed a threat. But there was something in those blue eyes that spoke of decency, of honor, things she had begun to believe no longer existed in this harsh territory. "Hannah," she finally replied. "Hannah Osborne." Noah nodded, his eyes scanning the destruction around them. "What happened here, Miss Osborne?" "Raiders," she said simply. 3 nights ago, they took everything, killed my parents, burned what they couldn't carry." A muscle tightened in Noah's jaw. "And you've been here since then, alone." Hannah nodded, suddenly aware of how she must appear filthy, half-starved, pitiful. "You can't stay here," Noah said firmly. "Night's coming, and it'll be freezing soon." He looked around once more. "Is there anywhere else you can go? Family nearby?" Hannah shook her head. "No one. We came west from Pennsylvania last year. My father wanted to start fresh." Noah seemed to make a decision then. "Miss Osborne, I've got a small ranch about 10 miles north of here. It's not much, but there's a spare room, clean water, and hot food." He paused. "I know you don't know me from Adam, but I swear on my mother's Bible that you'll be safe. I can't in good conscience leave you here to die." Hannah hesitated, weighing her options. There weren't many. Stay and likely perish from exposure or starvation, or trust this stranger who appeared out of nowhere like some divine intervention. Her voice broke, and tears welled up unexpectedly. They were the first she'd shed since the attack, as if his kindness had somehow broken through the wall of shock that had protected her. Noah's expression softened further. You don't have to decide anything beyond tonight. We'll get you fed, cleaned up, and rested. Tomorrow, if you want to go to town, I'll take you. There's a decent boarding house in Silver Creek." Hannah nodded weakly. "Thank you, Mr. Rawlins." "Noah," he corrected gently. "Can you stand Miss Osborne?" Hannah tried to push herself up, but her legs, weak from days of minimal food and water, buckled beneath her. Without hesitation, Noah stepped forward and scooped her into his arms. She was too exhausted to protest, her head falling against his solid chest. "I've got you," he murmured, carrying her easily through the ruins of her homestead. His wagon sat on the path leading up to what had once been her front door. A pair of chestnut horses stood patiently in their traces. Noah carried Hannah to the back of the wagon and set her down gently on a blanket-covered bench. "Just rest here a moment," he said, then went to retrieve something from the front of the wagon. He returned with a canteen and a piece of jerky. "Small sips," he cautioned, handing her the water. "And eat this slowly. Your stomach will need time to adjust." Hannah did as instructed, the cool water the sweetest thing she'd ever tasted. The jerky was tough but flavorful, and she had to resist the urge to devour it whole. Noah moved around the ruined property, examining the destruction. "Was there anything you wanted to take with you? Anything that survived?" Hannah thought of the small wooden box she'd managed to pull from the smoldering ruins. It contained her mother's locket, her father's pocket watch, and a few family photographs, all that remained of her past life. "Just a small box," she said, "by where I was sitting." Noah nodded and returned to retrieve it. When he came back, he had a heavy wool blanket which he draped around her shoulders. "The nights get cold this time of year," he explained. After securing the box in the wagon, Noah climbed up to the driver's bench. "It's about an hour's ride to my place," he said. "Try to rest if you can." The wagon lurched forward, beginning its journey north. Hannah huddled under the blanket, the gentle swaying motion almost comforting after days of stillness. As they pulled away, she cast one last glance at the remains of her family's ranch, a dark silhouette against the twilight sky. "I'm sorry about your folks," Noah said quietly, keeping his eyes on the trail ahead. "No one should have to endure what you've been through." Hannah didn't respond immediately, watching as the ruins disappeared from view. "Thank you," she finally said, "for stopping. Not many would." Noah glanced back at her. Any decent man would have done the same. "There aren't many decent men left in these parts," Hannah replied, bitterness edging her voice. "I won't argue with that," Noah conceded, "but they do exist. My pa always said that hard times bring out either the best or the worst in folks." They fell into silence as the wagon continued its steady pace. The vast Colorado sky stretched endlessly above them, stars beginning to emerge like diamonds scattered across dark velvet. Despite her circumstances, Hannah found herself marveling at their beauty. Even in her darkest hour, the universe continued its ancient patterns, indifferent to human suffering yet somehow offering comfort in its constancy. "May I ask where you're coming from?" Hannah asked, breaking the silence. "Silver Creek," Noah replied. "I make the trip every 2 weeks for supplies. I've got a small cattle operation, nothing fancy, but it keeps me fed and sheltered." "You live alone?" The question slipped out before Hannah could consider its propriety. If Noah found the inquiry inappropriate, he didn't show it. "Just me and my dog, Rusty. Had a ranch hand until last month, but he caught gold fever and headed to South Park." He paused. "Don't worry, though. The house has 2 bedrooms with a proper door between them. And I'll be sleeping in the barn tonight." Hannah felt a flush of embarrassment. "I didn't mean to imply, no need to explain," Noah interrupted gently. "It's a fair concern for a lady in your position." As they traveled, Noah pointed out landmarks, a peculiarly shaped rock formation, a stream that never ran dry even in the worst droughts, a cluster of aspens whose leaves were just beginning to turn golden. His knowledge of the land spoke of someone who'd been there for years, not a newcomer like herself. "How long have you had your ranch?" Hannah asked. "Going on 5 years now," Noah answered. "Came out from Missouri after the war. Needed someplace new, someplace that didn't remind me of all we lost." The subtle shift in his tone told Hannah he wasn't just referring to material possessions. The war had left scars on everyone, some visible, others hidden deep within. "Were you a soldier?" she asked carefully. Noah nodded once. "Confederate cavalry, not something I'm particularly proud of these days, but a man can't change his past." Hannah appreciated his honesty. "My father was Union," she said, "but he always said that most men on both sides were just fighting for what they believed was right." "Your father sounds like he was a wise man," Noah replied. "I'm sorry I never got to meet him." The terrain gradually changed as they continued north, the flat plains giving way to gently rolling hills dotted with pine and aspen. The air grew cooler and carried the scent of evergreen. In the distance, a wolf howled, its mournful cry echoing across the wilderness. "Almost there," Noah said after they'd been traveling for nearly an hour. Just over that rise, the wagon crested the hill and Noah's ranch came into view. It was modest, but well-maintained, a sturdy log cabin with smoke curling from its stone chimney. A barn, a corral where a few horses milled about, and several fenced pastures where dark shapes of cattle could be made out in the moonlight. A small creek wound its way along the eastern edge of the property, reflecting the silver light of the moon. "It's lovely," Hannah said sincerely. Noah seemed pleased by her approval. "It's not much compared to some of the big spreads, but it's mine, paid off last year." As they approached the cabin, a large red dog came bounding out, barking enthusiastically. "That's Rusty," Noah explained. "Don't worry, he's all noise, never met a stranger he didn't like." The wagon pulled up in front of the cabin. Noah set the brake and jumped down, coming around to the back to help Hannah. Without asking permission, he lifted her into his arms again, clearly seeing that she was still too weak to walk unassisted. "Just until you get your strength back," he said, carrying her toward the cabin door. Rusty danced around them, his tail wagging furiously. Noah nudged the door open with his boot and carried Hannah inside. The cabin's interior was simple but comfortable, a main room with a stone fireplace, wooden table with 4 chairs, a rocking chair, and a small bookshelf filled with well-worn volumes. 2 doors led off to what Hannah presumed were the bedrooms. Everything was neat and orderly, surprisingly so for a bachelor's residence. Noah set Hannah down gently in the rocking chair closest to the fire. "Let me get you some clean water and something proper to eat," he said. "Then I'll show you where you can clean up." He moved to a cupboard and took out a bowl, filling it with water from a pitcher. He handed it to Hannah along with a clean cloth. "For your face and hands while I heat up some stew." Hannah accepted gratefully, dipping the cloth into the cool water and pressing it to her face. It felt heavenly to wash away even a small amount of the grime that had accumulated over the past 3 days. She watched as Noah moved efficiently around the small kitchen area, stoking the fire in the iron stove and placing a pot on top. "The stew's from yesterday," he explained. "But it should still be good, rabbit and vegetables." The homey domesticity of the scene struck Hannah suddenly, bringing a fresh wave of grief. Just a week ago, she'd been doing similar tasks in her own kitchen, her mother working beside her, her father coming in from the fields for supper. Now all of that was gone forever. Noah seemed to sense her distress. "It's all right to grieve, Miss Osborne," he said quietly. "No one expects you to be strong all the time." His simple acknowledgement of her pain loosened something inside Hannah, and tears began to flow freely down her cheeks. She cried silently, shoulders shaking as Noah continued preparing the meal, allowing her the dignity of her grief without awkward attempts to stop it. When the stew was hot, he poured it into a bowl and placed it on a small table beside her, along with a spoon and a chunk of bread. "Eat what you can," he said. "Don't force yourself." The stew smelled delicious, and despite her sorrow, Hannah found she was ravenously hungry. She ate slowly as Noah had advised, savoring each bite. He busied himself with tasks around the cabin, feeding Rusty, adding wood to the fire, and gathering clean linens, all while giving her space to eat and compose herself. When Hannah had finished, Noah took the empty bowl. "There's a washtub in the back room," he said. "I'll heat some water for you. There's soap, towels, and—" He hesitated. "I don't have any women's clothing, but I can offer you one of my clean shirts to sleep in. It'll be big, but it's better than what you're wearing now." Hannah nodded, grateful beyond words. Thank you, Noah, for everything. He disappeared into one of the bedrooms and returned with a neatly folded flannel shirt. It's my newest one, he said, almost apologetically. I'll get that water heated up. As Noah worked to prepare her bath, Hannah felt an unexpected sense of safety wash over her. She was still grieving, still traumatized by all she had lost. But for the first time in days, she didn't feel completely alone. When the bath was ready, Noah showed her to the small room off the kitchen where the washtub waited, steam rising invitingly from the water. Clean towels were stacked on a stool, along with the promised shirt and a bar of soap that smelled faintly of pine. Take as long as you need, Noah said. I'll be outside tending to the horses. Just call if you need anything. Left alone, Hannah peeled off her filthy dress, wincing at the state of her body, bruised, scratched, and covered in soot. She stepped into the tub, the hot water stinging at first, but then providing blessed relief to her aching muscles. She scrubbed until her skin was pink, washed her hair twice, and finally felt human again. The flannel shirt Noah had provided hung to her knees when she put it on. It smelled of sunshine and fresh air, as if it had been dried outdoors. Hannah gathered her courage and emerged from the washroom, feeling oddly vulnerable in the borrowed garment. Noah had returned and was sitting at the table, cleaning a rifle. He looked up when she entered, his eyes widening slightly before he quickly averted his gaze. Feel better? He asked, focusing intently on his task. Immensely, Hannah replied. Thank you for the clothes and the bath, Noah nodded, still not looking directly at her. I've made up the bed in the spare room, he said. Fresh sheets and extra blankets. It gets cold at night up here. You're very kind, Mr. Rawlins. Noah, he corrected again, finally meeting her eyes. And it's not kindness, it's just being decent. Hannah smiled tiredly. Then you're very decent, Noah. He returned her smile tentatively. You should get some rest, Miss Osborne. It's been a long day for you, Hannah, she insisted. If I'm to call you Noah, then you must call me Hannah. Hannah, he repeated, as if testing the name. Get some sleep, Hannah. We can talk more in the morning about what you want to do next. She nodded and moved toward the bedroom he'd indicated. Good night, Noah, and thank you again. Good night, Hannah. She closed the door behind her and looked around the small but tidy room. A narrow bed with a handmade quilt, a simple wooden dresser, a small table with a lamp, and a window that looked out toward the mountains. It was sparse but clean and welcoming. Hannah climbed into the bed, the sheets cool against her clean skin. Despite all the thoughts whirling through her mind, exhaustion claimed her almost immediately, and she fell into the first peaceful sleep she'd had in days. Morning came with the crowing of a rooster and the soft golden light of dawn filtering through the curtains. For a moment, Hannah was disoriented, forgetting where she was. Then the memories came flooding back: the raid, the fire, her parents, the days spent among the ashes, and finally, Noah's arrival like some guardian angel sent to rescue her. She sat up, wincing as her body protested. Despite the bath and good night's sleep, she was still sore from her ordeal. The smell of coffee and frying bacon drifted under the door, making her stomach growl in response. Hannah looked around for her dress, then remembered it was little more than a filthy rag now. She would have to face Noah in his borrowed shirt. Taking a deep breath, she opened the bedroom door and stepped into the main room. Noah was at the stove, his back to her, frying bacon in a cast-iron skillet. He turned at the sound of the door opening. "Good morning," he said, his voice warm. "Hope you slept well." "Better than I have in days," Hannah admitted. "That smells wonderful." Noah gestured to the table, which was already set for two. "Coffee's hot if you want some. Breakfast will be ready in a minute." Hannah poured herself a cup of the strong, black coffee and sat at the table, suddenly aware of her bare legs beneath the shirt. She tugged it down as far as it would go, feeling a blush rise to her cheeks. Noah seemed to sense her discomfort. "I rode into town at first light," he said, setting a plate of bacon, eggs, and fried potatoes in front of her. "Picked up a few things you might need." He nodded toward a package on the dresser that Hannah hadn't noticed before. "Nothing fancy, I'm afraid. Just a dress, some undergarments, and basic necessities. Mrs. Turner at the general store helped me choose. I told her I had a cousin visiting unexpectedly." Hannah was touched by his thoughtfulness. You didn't have to do that. You can't very well go around in my shirt, Noah pointed out practically, sitting down across from her with his own plate. Though I must say it looks better on you than it ever did on me. The compliment, delivered so casually, brought another flush to Hannah's cheeks. Thank you, she said quietly, for the clothes and for everything else. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along. Noah's expression grew serious. I'm just glad I was passing by when I did, he hesitated. Hannah, I need to ask. Do you have any idea who did this to your family? Hannah shook her head, the memory of that night still raw. It was dark. They wore bandanas over their faces. I was hiding in the root cellar when they came. She swallowed hard. I heard the shots, then saw the flames through the cracks in the cellar doors. By the time I got out, the house was an inferno. I couldn't save them. It wasn't your fault, Noah said firmly. There was nothing you could have done against armed men. Hannah nodded, though the guilt still gnawed at her. Have there been other attacks like this? A few, Noah admitted. Mostly on isolated homesteads. The law around here is stretched thin. Sheriff Hollister tries, but he's one man covering too much territory. They ate in silence for a while, Hannah savoring the simple but delicious food. When they'd finished, Noah cleared the plates and poured more coffee. So, he said, settling back in his chair, we should talk about what comes next for you. Hannah stared into her coffee cup. I don't know, she admitted. Everything I had was in that house, my parents' savings, our supplies, everything. Do you have family back east who could help? A distant aunt in Pittsburgh, but we haven't spoken in years. She disapproved of my father moving us west. Hannah shook her head. I don't want to go back east with my tail between my legs. Noah considered this. There's the boarding house in Silver Creek, as I mentioned. Mrs. Perkins is a good woman. She might let you work for your keep until you can get on your feet. Doing what? I don't have many skills that are valued out here. I can cook and sew, but so can most women. You're educated, though, Noah observed. I noticed the books among your family's things. The town's been looking for a school teacher. Hannah looked up in surprise. How did you know I'm educated? Noah smiled slightly. The way you speak, your vocabulary, the fact that you can read. He nodded toward the small box of her possessions that he'd brought in from the wagon. And your hands, they're not just a farmer's daughter's hands. Hannah looked down at her hands, smooth and uncalloused compared to most frontier women's. Her father had insisted she continue her studies even after they moved west, bringing a trunk full of books and making sure she had time to read and write amid the chores. I did teach back in Pennsylvania, she admitted. Just for a year at a small country school. See, you do have a valuable skill. Noah leaned forward. Look, I'm not trying to push you out. You're welcome to stay here until you figure things out. I just thought you might be more comfortable in town among other women. Hannah wasn't sure how to respond. The thought of going to town, of facing strangers and explaining her situation, was overwhelming. But staying here, alone with a man she barely knew, no matter how decent he seemed, was hardly proper. As if reading her thoughts, Noah added, If you're worried about propriety, I understand. I could stay in the bunkhouse while you're here. It's not as comfortable as the cabin, but I've slept in worse places. I couldn't put you out of your own home, Hannah protested. It's no trouble, Noah assured her. Besides, it's only temporary until you decide what you want to do. Hannah felt tears threatening again, moved by his continued kindness. Why are you helping me like this? You don't even know me. Noah was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. During the war, I was wounded at Chickamauga, he finally said, left for dead on the battlefield. A Union farmer found me, took me to his home, and his wife nursed me back to health. They had every reason to let me die or turn me over as a prisoner, but they didn't. They showed me kindness when I needed it most. He met her eyes steadily. I swore if I ever had the chance to pass that kindness on, I would. His story touched Hannah deeply. Well, I'm grateful, whatever your reasons. So what'll it be, town or here for a few days while you sort things out? Hannah considered her options. The thought of facing a town full of strangers in her current emotional state was daunting. Could I stay just a few days, just until I feel stronger? Noah nodded. Of course. I'll ride back to town later and let Mrs. Perkins know to expect you by the end of the week in case you decide to go that route. Thank you. In the meantime, Noah said, standing up, why don't you get dressed? The package is on the dresser. I need to check on the cattle, but I'll be back by midday. Make yourself at home. After Noah left, Hannah opened the package he'd brought. Inside was a simple but well-made blue calico dress, undergarments, a hairbrush, soap, and other necessities. There was even a pair of sturdy boots that looked to be about her size. She was touched by his thoroughness. She dressed quickly, grateful to be in proper clothes again. The dress was a bit large, but not uncomfortably so. After braiding her hair and tidying the kitchen, Hannah found herself at loose ends. She wandered to the bookshelf, curious about what kind of books a rancher like Noah would read. To her surprise, the shelf held an eclectic collection books on animal husbandry and farming, as expected, but also poetry by Whitman and Longfellow, novels by Dickens and Hawthorne, and several history books. There was even a well-worn copy of Shakespeare's collected works. Hannah selected Whitman's Leaves of Grass and settled into the rocking chair by the window. Outside, she could see Noah in the distance, riding among his cattle. He sat tall in the saddle, his movements confident and fluid. Rusty trotted alongside his horse, occasionally darting after a stray calf. The peaceful scene, combined with the comfort of the poem's familiar rhythms, soothed Hannah's troubled mind. For the first time since the attack, she felt a small measure of peace. Not happiness that would take time, but at least a moment's respite from grief. She read until the sun was high in the sky, then put the book aside. Feeling restless, she decided to make herself useful. Noah had been so kind, the least she could do was prepare lunch. She explored the kitchen, finding beans, salt pork, and cornmeal. Simple ingredients, but she could work with them. By the time Noah returned, Hannah had a pot of bean soup simmering on the stove and a pan of cornbread baking in the oven. The cabin was filled with the homey sense of cooking. Noah paused in the doorway, surprise evident on his face. You didn't have to cook, he said, removing his hat. I wanted to, Hannah replied. It felt good to do something normal. Noah nodded in understanding. Smells wonderful, let me just wash up. They ate together at the small table, the silence between them comfortable rather than awkward. Noah complimented her cooking, and Hannah found herself asking about his ranch, how many cattle he had, his plans for expansion, the challenges of ranching in this harsh territory. It's not an easy life, Noah admitted, but it's a good one. There's freedom out here that you won't find back east. My father said the same thing, Hannah said softly. He loved it here despite the hardships. Your father sounds like a man I would have respected, Noah said. Building a life out here takes courage. He was a good man, Hannah agreed. Stubborn sometimes, but kind-hearted. My mother was the gentle one, always seeing the best in people. They raised a strong daughter, Noah observed. Many would have broken under what you've endured. Hannah looked down at her bowl. I don't feel strong, I feel lost. That's natural, Noah said gently. But you're here, you're breathing, you're moving forward. That's strength, Hannah. His words warmed something inside her that had been cold since the night of the fire. Thank you for saying that. After lunch, Noah showed Hannah around the ranch. The property was larger than it had appeared in the darkness the night before, about 200 acres, with access to a mountain stream that never ran dry. The main herd consisted of 50 head of cattle, with plans to expand to 100 by the following year. It's not as big as some of the spreads around here, Noah explained as they walked the property line, but it's enough for one man to manage with occasional help during calving and roundup. It's impressive, Hannah said sincerely. You've built something real here. Noah's expression softened with pride as he looked out over his land. It was just raw wilderness when I arrived. Took 3 years to build the cabin and fences, clear the pastures. He glanced at her. Your family's place, was it similar? Hannah nodded. Smaller, just 40 acres. My father was more interested in farming than ranching, though we had a few milk cows and chickens. Good land? Yes, especially by the creek. The soil was rich there. We had a good harvest last year. The memories were bittersweet. Her father's joy at the abundance of their first full harvest, her mother's preserving and canning, the feeling of security as they prepared for winter. Noah seemed to sense her sadness. "It's hard to lose a dream," he said quietly. "Especially one you've worked so hard for." "Yes," Hannah agreed, "but at least I'm alive to start again." They continued their walk, with Noah pointing out features of the land and sharing stories of his early days on the ranch. Hannah found herself laughing at his tale of trying to build his first fence with no experience, ending up with posts so crooked that his neighbor had offered to buy him spectacles. "I had to tear the whole thing down and start over," Noah admitted. "Cost me an extra week of work, but I learned my lesson." By the time they returned to the cabin, the afternoon was waning. Noah needed to check his trap lines, and Hannah offered to prepare dinner while he was gone. There was an easy rhythm developing between them, a natural division of labor that felt comfortable despite their short acquaintance. As the days passed, Hannah found herself settling into life at the ranch. She took over the cooking and indoor chores, while Noah handled the livestock and outdoor work. They fell into a routine that might have seemed domestic to an outside observer, though both were careful to maintain proper boundaries. Noah kept his promise to sleep in the bunkhouse, giving Hannah privacy in the cabin. Each morning, he would knock on the door before entering for breakfast, treating her with a respect that helped rebuild her sense of security. They talked during meals and in the evenings, getting to know each other gradually. Noah told her about his childhood in Missouri, his difficult relationship with his father, his time in the war, and his journey west. Hannah shared stories of her life in Pennsylvania, her parents' love story, and their dreams for a new beginning in Colorado. On the fourth day, Noah brought up the subject of her future again. "I rode into town yesterday while you were resting," he said over breakfast. "Spoke to the town council about the teaching position. They're interested in meeting you." Hannah set down her coffee cup. "You did?" Noah nodded. "The school's been without a teacher since Miss Winters married and moved to Denver last spring. The children have been making do with parents taking turns, but it's not ideal. What did you tell them about me?" "Just that you were a teacher back east and had recently lost your family in a tragedy." Noah's eyes were kind. "I didn't share details that weren't mine to share." Hannah was grateful for his discretion. "And they want to meet me, even without references?" "I vouched for your character," Noah said simply. "That carries some weight in these parts." Hannah was touched by his confidence in her. "When would they want to meet?" "Whenever you're ready, no rush." Noah hesitated. "Hannah, I want you to know that my offer still stands. You're welcome to stay here as long as you need, whether you take the teaching position or not." Hannah studied his face, seeing nothing but sincerity there. Over the past few days, she'd come to respect Noah Rawlins deeply. He was hardworking, honest, and kind, qualities that were rare enough in the world, but especially so in this rugged territory where the harsh conditions often brought out the worst in men. "Thank you," she said softly, "but I can't impose on you indefinitely. It wouldn't be right." "It's not an imposition," Noah insisted. "Having you here has been." He seemed to search for the right word. "Nice. The cabin feels more like a home with you in it." The admission, simple as it was, made Hannah's heart beat a little faster. She had felt it too, a growing comfort in his presence, a sense of rightness that went beyond gratitude for his rescue. "Still," she said, trying to maintain her practical sense, "I need to make my own way. The teaching position sounds perfect if they'll have me." Noah nodded, though she thought she detected a flash of disappointment in his eyes. "I can take you to town tomorrow to meet the council if you feel up to it." "I'd like that," Hannah agreed. The next morning dawned clear and cool, a perfect autumn day. Hannah dressed carefully in the blue calico dress, braiding her hair neatly and pinning it up in a style that she hoped conveyed competence and respectability. Her appearance mattered now more than ever. First impressions would be crucial in a small town like Silver Creek. Noah had the wagon ready after breakfast, with Rusty sitting proudly on the bench as if he expected to accompany them. "Is he coming too?" Hannah asked, smiling at the dog's eager expression. "If you don't mind," Noah replied. "He loves going to town. The butcher always saves him a bone." "Of course he can come," Hannah said, scratching Rusty behind the ears. The dog had become her friend over the past days, his uncomplicated affection a balm to her wounded spirit. The ride to Silver Creek took about an hour. As they traveled, Noah told her about the town and its inhabitants, who was trustworthy, who tended to gossip, who might be particularly helpful to a newcomer like herself. Mrs. Perkins at the boarding house is strict but fair, he explained. Her rates are reasonable, and she keeps a respectable establishment. No rowdy cowboys or late-night visitors allowed. Hannah appreciated the information, though the thought of leaving Noah's cabin for a room in a boarding house filled her with an unexpected melancholy. Despite the trauma that had brought her there, she had found comfort in the simple routine they'd established. Silver Creek came into view as they crested a hill, a typical western town with one main street lined with wooden buildings, side streets with a mix of modest homes, and a white church steeple rising above it all. It wasn't large, perhaps 500 inhabitants at most, but it looked well established and relatively prosperous. "It's bigger than I expected," Hannah commented as they drove down the main street. "It's grown a lot in the past few years," Noah explained. The silver mine 10 miles north employs about 100 men, and the railroad spur line brings regular commerce. People nodded or waved to Noah as they passed, many casting curious glances at Hannah. In a town this size, a new face, especially a female one, was noteworthy. Noah stopped the wagon in front of a 2-story building with a sign identifying it as Silver Creek Town Hall. "The council meets upstairs," he explained. "They're expecting us." Hannah took a deep breath, suddenly nervous. "How do I look?" she asked, smoothing her dress. Noah's gaze traveled over her, warm and appreciative. "Like exactly what this town needs," he said softly. "A proper lady with intelligence and strength." His words bolstered her confidence. Noah helped her down from the wagon, his hand lingering on hers perhaps a moment longer than necessary. "I'll wait out here with Rusty," he said. "Take your time." Hannah nodded and climbed the stairs to the town hall, her heart pounding with a mixture of anxiety and hope. The meeting room was simple but dignified, with a long table where 4 men and 1 woman sat waiting. The eldest man, with a neatly trimmed white beard and spectacles, stood as she entered. "Miss Osborne, I'm Judge Wilson, head of the town council. Mr. Rawlins spoke very highly of you." Hannah shook his offered hand. "Thank you for seeing me, Judge Wilson." "Please have a seat," the judge said, gesturing to a chair at the end of the table. "Allow me to introduce the rest of the council." The introductions preceded Mrs. Abigail Foster, the only female member and owner of the town's millinery shop, Mr. Thomas Jenkins, the banker, Dr. Samuel Parker, the town physician, and Mr. Harold Miller, who owned the general store. Each greeted Hannah politely, though with varying degrees of warmth. "Mr. Rawlins tells us you have experience teaching," Judge Wilson began once the introductions were complete. "Yes, sir," Hannah replied. "I taught for a year at a country school in Pennsylvania before my family moved west." "And your educational background?" Mrs. Foster inquired. "I attended the Lancaster Female Seminary until I was 18, Hannah answered. "My father believed strongly in education for women as well as men." This seemed to impress the council members, as the Lancaster Seminary was well regarded even in these western territories. The questions continued for nearly an hour about her teaching philosophy, her familiarity with various subjects, her experience with children of different ages, and her views on discipline. Hannah answered honestly and articulately, drawing on her training and brief teaching experience. Finally, Judge Wilson sat back in his chair. "Miss Osborne, would you mind stepping outside for a few minutes while we confer?" "Of course," Hannah replied, rising from her seat. She left the room, closing the door behind her, and descended the stairs to where Noah waited with the wagon. "How did it go?" he asked as she approached. "I think well," Hannah said. "They're discussing it now," Noah smiled. "You'll get it. I saw their faces when you walked in, composed, educated, exactly what they've been looking for." Hannah was touched by his confidence. "We'll see." They didn't have to wait long. Less than 10 minutes later, Dr. Parker appeared at the top of the stairs and called down, "Miss Osborne, we'd like to speak with you again." Hannah exchanged a quick glance with Noah, who gave her an encouraging nod, then climbed the stairs once more. When she re-entered the meeting room, all 5 council members were standing. "Miss Osborne," Judge Wilson said formally, "we would like to offer you the position of teacher at Silver Creek School, effective immediately." The term is already underway, with 28 students ranging from 6 to 16 years of age. The salary is $40 per month, with room and board at Mrs. Perkins' boarding house included as part of your compensation. Relief and gratitude washed over Hannah. "Thank you, Judge Wilson." "I accept, and I promise to do my very best for the children of Silver Creek." Mrs. Foster stepped forward with a warm smile. "Welcome to our community, Miss Osborne. The school has been without proper guidance for too long. The children need someone like you." The rest of the council members offered their congratulations and welcome. Dr. Parker informed her that school would resume on Monday, giving her 3 days to prepare and settle in. Mr. Miller offered to provide any school supplies she might need on credit until her first month's salary was paid. When all the details had been arranged, Hannah left the town hall with a lightness in her step that she hadn't felt since before the tragedy. She had a purpose again, a way forward, a place in the world. Noah was leaning against the wagon, feeding Rusty a piece of jerky. He straightened when he saw her approach, studying her face. "Good news?" he asked, though her expression must have already told him the answer. "They offered me the position," Hannah confirmed, unable to keep the smile from her face. "I start on Monday." "Congratulations," Noah said, his own smile genuine, though something flickered in his eyes that Hannah couldn't quite identify. "I knew they'd recognize your value." "I couldn't have done it without you," Hannah said earnestly. "Your recommendation, the clothes, the confidence you've shown in me, I don't know how to thank you." "Seeing you smile again is thanks enough," Noah replied softly. Their eyes held for a long moment, and Hannah felt something shift between them, a recognition, perhaps, of feelings that had been growing despite the tragic circumstances of their meeting. "Mrs. Foster is going to take me to meet Mrs. Perkins and see my room at the boarding house," Hannah said, breaking the moment. "Then Mr. Miller is going to show me the schoolhouse so I can begin planning." Noah nodded. "That's good. You should get acquainted with the town and its people." He hesitated. "Would you like me to wait? I could take you back to the ranch to collect your things afterward." "That would be kind," Hannah said. "It shouldn't take more than an hour or 2. Noah agreed to meet her at the general store when she was finished. As Hannah watched him lead Rusty down the street toward the butcher's shop, she felt a curious hollowness in her chest. She should have been purely joyful at this new beginning, this chance to rebuild her life. Instead, she found herself already mourning the end of her brief time at Noah's ranch. Mrs. Foster proved to be a kind and informative guide, showing Hannah around the town and introducing her to various residents. The boarding house was clean and respectable, just as Noah had described, and Mrs. Perkins seemed strict but fair. The room that would be Hannah's was small but private, with a narrow bed, a dresser, a washstand, and a window overlooking the main street. The schoolhouse was a simple one-room building at the edge of town, with rows of wooden desks, a blackboard, and a small raised platform for the teacher's desk. It was dusty from disuse, but otherwise in good condition. "The parents have been taking turns keeping the children occupied," Mrs. Foster explained, "but there's been little actual teaching happening since Miss Winters left." Hannah walked slowly around the room, imagining it filled with children eager to learn. Despite the circumstances that had brought her here, she felt a spark of excitement at the prospect of teaching again. "It's a good school," she said. "I'll need to review what they've been studying, create lesson plans." "The previous teacher's plans and records are in the desk drawer," Mrs. Foster said, "and I'm sure the children will be thrilled to have a real teacher again. They've been quite unruly with the rotating parents." By the time Hannah had finished her tour of the town and made arrangements to move into the boarding house the following day, 2 hours had passed. She found Noah waiting patiently outside the general store, engaged in conversation with Mr. Miller. "There she is," Mr. Miller said warmly as Hannah approached. "Our new schoolmarm. The news is already spreading through town." Hannah smiled. Word travels fast. In a town this size, lightning is slower, Mr. Miller chuckled. Well, I'll leave you two to your business. Miss Osborne, don't forget to come by tomorrow to pick up those school supplies we discussed. After the storekeeper had gone, Noah turned to Hannah. Ready to head back, she nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of the day's emotions. Yes, please. The ride back to the ranch was quieter than the journey into town had been. Hannah was lost in thoughts of her new position and the changes ahead, while Noah seemed preoccupied with his own reflections. You're going to be an excellent teacher, he said finally, breaking the silence. Those children are fortunate. I hope so, Hannah replied. It's been a while since I taught and the circumstances are so different here from back east. You'll adapt, Noah said confidently. You've already shown how resilient you are. When they reached the ranch, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Noah helped Hannah down from the wagon, his hands strong and steady at her waist. For a moment they stood close, neither moving away immediately. I'll make us some supper, Hannah said softly. One last meal before I move to town, Noah nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. I'd like that. That evening had a bittersweet quality. The satisfaction of Hannah's new position mingled with the knowledge that their brief time together was ending. They talked over dinner about practical matters when Noah would bring her to town the next day, what she would need to take with her, how often he came to Silver Creek for supplies. After the meal, they sat by the fire, the autumn evening having turned chilly. Rusty lay at Hannah's feet as if already missing her presence. Will you be all right on your own again? Hannah asked, watching the flames dance in the fireplace. Noah looked up from the piece of wood he was whittling. I was on my own for years before you came, he reminded her. I'll manage. Still, I feel as if I'm abandoning you after all you've done for me. Noah set down his knife and the half-carved figure. You're not abandoning anyone, Hannah. You're moving forward with your life as you should. He paused. Besides, Silver Creek isn't far. I'll see you when I come to town. Hannah nodded, though the thought of seeing him only occasionally brought an unexpected pang. In just a few days, his presence had become a comfort, a constant in her newly uncertain world. I'll never forget what you did for me, she said quietly. Finding me in that terrible state, bringing me here, helping me start over, most men would have ridden on by. I'm not most men, Noah said simply. No, Hannah agreed, meeting his gaze across the firelit room. You're not. Something passed between them then, an acknowledgement of feelings that had grown quickly but undeniably in their short time together. Neither spoke of it directly. It was too soon, the wounds of Hannah's loss too fresh, the future too uncertain. Instead, they talked of other things, books they had both read, places they had seen, dreams they still harbored. It was well past midnight when Hannah finally rose to retire to her room for the last time. Good night, Noah, she said, pausing at her door. Thank you for everything. Good night, Hannah, he replied softly. Sleep well. The next morning brought a flurry of activity as Hannah packed her few belongings and Noah readied the wagon for the trip to town. The blue dress and undergarments he had purchased for her, the wooden box containing her parents' keepsakes, and a book of Whitman's poetry that Noah insisted she take as a gift. These constituted the sum of her worldly possessions. As they were preparing to leave, Noah disappeared into his bedroom and returned with a small leather pouch. I want you to take this, he said, holding it out to her. Hannah looked at him questioningly. What is it? Money, Noah said simply. Not much, just $20. Enough to get you through until your first payday. Hannah immediately shook her head. Noah, I can't accept that. You've already done so much. Please, he insisted. It would make me feel better knowing you have something to fall back on. You can repay me when you're settled if it matters to you. Hannah hesitated, then accepted the pouch. His concern for her welfare touched her deeply. I will repay you, she promised. Every cent. The journey to town was filled with practical advice from Noah about life in Silver Creek, which days the mail coach arrived, when the general store received fresh supplies, which local families might be particularly helpful to a newcomer like herself. When they reached the boarding house, Mrs. Perkins was waiting on the porch. She greeted Hannah warmly and Noah with polite formality, her eyes taking in their interaction with shrewd assessment. "Your room is ready, Miss Osborne," she said. "Dinner is served promptly at 6, no exceptions. Gentlemen callers are received in the parlor only until 8 in the evening." "Thank you, Mrs. Perkins," Hannah replied. "I'll remember." Noah carried Hannah's few possessions up to her room, setting them carefully on the bed. The small space seemed even smaller with his tall frame occupying it, but Mrs. Perkins had made no objection to his brief presence, standing watchfully in the doorway. "Well," Noah said, looking around the tidy but sparse room, "I suppose you're all set." Hannah nodded, suddenly finding it difficult to speak. This was goodbye, at least to the daily comfort of his presence that she had come to rely on. "I'll walk you out," she managed, following him down the narrow stairs to the front porch. Mrs. Perkins discreetly withdrew into the house, giving them a moment of privacy. "You have everything you need?" Noah asked, his voice gruff with unspoken emotion. "Yes," Hannah said. "Thanks to you." Noah shifted his weight, hat in hand, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Hannah, He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "I want you to know that if you ever need anything at all, you only have to send word. I'll be here as quickly as I can." "I know," Hannah said softly, "and that means more than I can say." Impulsively, she stepped forward and placed a gentle kiss on his cheek. "Thank you, Noah Rawlins, for my life, for my future." Noah's eyes widened slightly at the gesture, and his hand came up to touch the spot where her lips had been. "You're welcome, Hannah Osborne," he replied, his voice husky. "I'll see you soon." With that, he placed his hat on his head, turned and walked to his wagon where Rusty waited. Hannah watched until the wagon disappeared down the street, then turned to face her new home and the new life that awaited her. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity as Hannah settled into her role as Silver Creek schoolteacher. The children, though initially wary of their new instructor, quickly warmed to her patient but firm teaching style. The parents, relieved to have a qualified teacher at last, were supportive and appreciative. Hannah found herself busy from dawn until dusk preparing lessons, grading papers, meeting with parents, and learning the rhythms of her new community. Mrs. Perkins proved to be a strict but motherly presence, taking Hannah under her wing and introducing her to the unwritten social rules of frontier life. Through it all, Hannah's thoughts often turned to Noah. True to his word, he came to town every 2 weeks for supplies. Each time he would stop by the schoolhouse or the boarding house to check on her, bringing small gifts, a book he thought she might enjoy, fresh eggs from his chickens, wildflowers he'd gathered on the trail. Their conversations were friendly, but tinged with an undercurrent of something deeper that neither seemed ready to acknowledge. Hannah found herself looking forward to his visits with an eagerness that surprised her, counting the days between his appearances in town. As October gave way to November, the weather turned colder. The first snow dusted the mountains surrounding Silver Creek, a reminder that winter was approaching. Hannah had been teaching for nearly a month when Judge Wilson stopped by the schoolhouse one afternoon after the children had gone home. "Miss Osborne," he greeted her as she was erasing the day's lessons from the blackboard. "May I have a word?" "Of course, Judge Wilson," Hannah replied, setting down the eraser. "Is everything all right?" The judge settled his considerable frame into one of the student desks with some difficulty. "More than all right, my dear. The council met yesterday to discuss your progress, and I'm pleased to tell you that we are unanimously satisfied with your performance. The children are learning, the parents are happy, and discipline has improved remarkably." Hannah felt a warm glow of pride. "Thank you, Judge. That means a great deal to me." "We'd like to offer you a permanent position," the judge continued, "not just for this term, but for the foreseeable future. The same salary and accommodations with a review and potential increase after 6 months." "I'd be honored to accept," Hannah said without hesitation. Silver Creek had quickly become home in a way she hadn't expected. The people were kind, the work fulfilling, and for the first time since the tragedy, she felt as if she belonged somewhere. "Excellent," Judge Wilson beamed. "Oh, and one more thing. The Thanksgiving social is coming up in 2 weeks. As our school teacher, you'll be expected to attend. It's quite the event in Silver Creek. Everyone brings food, there's music and dancing, and it's a chance for the community to come together before winter sets in properly. I look forward to it, Hannah said sincerely. After the judge left, Hannah sat at her desk, contemplating this new development. A permanent position meant security, a chance to put down roots, to truly begin again. She wondered if Noah would come to the Thanksgiving social. The thought of seeing him in a setting other than their brief visits made her heart beat a little faster. The next day, Saturday, Hannah was helping Mrs. Perkins prepare vegetable soup for the evening meal when a knock came at the boarding house door. Mrs. Perkins wiped her hands on her apron and went to answer it, returning a moment later with Noah standing behind her. "Mr. Rawlins to see you, Miss Osborne," Mrs. Perkins announced, though her tone was warmer than usual. The older woman had developed a soft spot for Noah after hearing the full story of how he had rescued Hannah. "Noah," Hannah said, unable to keep the pleasure from her voice. "I wasn't expecting you until next week. I had business in town," Noah explained. "Thought I'd stop by to see how you're getting on." Mrs. Perkins, with surprising tact, excused herself to check on something in the pantry, leaving them alone in the kitchen. Noah looked good, Hannah thought. His face was freshly shaved, his clothes clean though well worn. He seemed less tired than when she'd last seen him 2 weeks prior. "You're looking well," she said, echoing her thoughts. "The ranch must be thriving." "It is," Noah confirmed. "I hired a new hand, Jed Cooper, good worker, honest. Having the extra help has made a difference." "I'm glad," Hannah said sincerely. "You were working too hard on your own." Noah's expression softened. "And you, how's the teaching going?" "Wonderfully," Hannah replied, unable to contain her news. "Judge Wilson offered me a permanent position yesterday. I accepted." A complex series of emotions crossed Noah's face: happiness, pride, and something that might have been disappointment, quickly masked. "That's fantastic news, Hannah. I knew you'd impress them." "I couldn't have done it without your help," Hannah reminded him. "Starting over seemed impossible after what happened. You gave me that chance." Noah waved away her gratitude. "You did the hard part, I just provided transportation." They smiled at each other, the familiar easy rapport returning despite the weeks apart. Noah glanced around the kitchen, noting the vegetables half chopped on the cutting board. "I'm interrupting your work." "Not at all," Hannah assured him. "Mrs. Perkins and I are just preparing dinner." She hesitated, then added, "Would you like to stay? There's plenty." Noah looked tempted but shook his head. "I should get back to the ranch before dark. Jed's capable, but there's a lot to do with winter coming on." Hannah nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. "Of course, I understand." But Noah continued, "I was wondering if you might like to go for a ride tomorrow. It's Sunday, you won't have school, and—" He paused, seeming uncharacteristically uncertain. "There's a place up in the foothills I'd like to show you. It's pretty this time of year." Hannah felt a flutter of anticipation. "I'd love to," she said immediately. "What time?" "After church, around noon," Noah suggested. "I'll bring a picnic lunch." "That sounds perfect," Hannah agreed. Noah's smile was warm with something more than friendship. "I'll see you tomorrow then." After he left, Mrs. Perkins emerged from the pantry with suspicious timing. "Mr. Rawlins seems like a fine man," she commented, returning to her soup pot. "He is," Hannah agreed, resuming her vegetable chopping. "Quite handsome too," Mrs. Perkins added casually. "And his ranch is one of the most promising in the area from what I hear." Hannah felt herself blushing. "Mrs. Perkins, are you playing matchmaker?" The older woman's eyes twinkled. "A woman in my position sees many things, my dear. The way that man looks at you isn't just friendly concern." Hannah's hands stilled on the cutting board. "It's complicated," she said softly. "We met under such difficult circumstances. I'm still healing from losing my parents." "Of course you are," Mrs. Perkins said kindly. "Grief takes time, but life has a way of moving forward, ready or not." She stirred the soup thoughtfully. "My Henry died 12 years ago. I thought my world had ended, but here I am, running this boarding house, surrounded by new friends and purpose." Hannah considered the older woman's words as they finished preparing the meal. Was she ready to open her heart to something more than friendship with Noah? The thought both thrilled and frightened her. Sunday dawned clear and cold, the kind of crisp autumn day that seemed to make the world more vivid. Hannah dressed with particular care for church, selecting her blue dress now altered to fit properly thanks to Mrs. Perkins' sewing skills, and arranging her hair in a style more elaborate than her usual teaching braid. After the service, Hannah found Noah waiting outside the church with 2 horses, his own chestnut gelding and a gentle-looking bay mare. "I borrowed Sadie from the livery for you," he explained as he helped Hannah mount. "She's steady and sweet-tempered." The mare did indeed seem placid, standing quietly as Hannah arranged her skirts and took the reins. It had been some time since she'd ridden, but the familiar motions came back quickly. They rode out of town heading west, toward the foothills that marked the beginning of the mountain range. The day was beautiful, the sun warm despite the chill in the air, the sky an impossible blue. Noah led them along a winding trail that gradually climbed, offering increasingly spectacular views of the valley below. "How did you find this place?" Hannah asked as they rode side by side where the trail permitted. "Exploration," Noah replied. "My first year here, I spent every free moment riding out in different directions, learning the land. This trail is one of my favorites." After about an hour's ride, they reached a small plateau overlooking the valley. Silver Creek was visible in the distance, a cluster of buildings nestled among the pines, with the silver ribbon of the creek itself winding through the landscape. "Oh, Noah," Hannah breathed, taking in the vista. "It's magnificent," Noah smiled, pleased by her reaction. "Wait until you see the aspens just over that rise," he said, pointing ahead. "They're at their peak color right now." He was right. Just beyond the plateau was a grove of aspen trees, their leaves a brilliant gold that seemed to glow in the midday sun. A small stream ran through the grove, creating a peaceful soundtrack of gurgling water. Noah helped Hannah dismount, then retrieved a blanket and picnic basket from his saddlebag. He spread the blanket in a sunny spot near the stream, sheltered by the golden aspens. The picnic was simple but delicious cold chicken, bread, cheese, apples, and a jar of preserved peaches that Noah admitted Mrs. Turner from the general store had helped him prepare. "I'm not much of a cook," he confessed with a self-deprecating smile. "Been missing your meals since you left," Hannah laughed. "Is that why you invited me out today, to remind me of my culinary duties?" Noah's expression grew serious. "No," he said quietly, "that's not why." The atmosphere between them shifted, the teasing giving way to something more meaningful. Hannah set down her half-eaten apple, suddenly aware of the isolation of their picnic spot, the intimacy of the moment. "Why did you invite me, Noah?" she asked softly. Noah took a deep breath as if gathering his courage. "Because I've missed you," he said simply. "Not just your cooking, your presence, your conversation, the way you make the cabin feel like a home." Hannah's heart quickened at his words. "I've missed you too," she admitted. "More than I expected to." Noah reached out hesitantly, taking her hand in his. His palm was warm and calloused, the hand of a man who worked hard for what he had. "Hannah, I know it's soon. I know you're still grieving, but I can't help how I feel." Hannah looked down at their joined hands, then back up to his face. His blue eyes were earnest, vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. "How do you feel?" she asked, though she thought she already knew the answer. "Like I've been waiting for you my whole life," Noah said, his voice rough with emotion. "Like finding you, even in those terrible circumstances, was some kind of miracle I don't deserve." Tears welled in Hannah's eyes at his words. "Noah." "You don't have to say anything," he assured her quickly. "I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know and to ask if there might be a chance someday when you're ready that you could feel something for me too." Hannah squeezed his hand, her heart full. "Noah Rawlins," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. "I already do." Hope and disbelief warred in Noah's expression. "You do?" Hannah nodded. "I think I started falling in love with you the moment you carried me from those ashes to your wagon. Not because you rescued me, though I'll always be grateful for that, but because of the kindness in your eyes, the gentleness in your hands, the decency in your soul." Noah's face transformed with joy. "Hannah," he breathed, reaching out to touch her cheek gently, "may I kiss you?" In answer, Hannah leaned forward, closing the distance between them. Their lips met in a tender, tentative kiss that quickly deepened into something more profound. Noah's arms encircled her, pulling her closer, and Hannah felt as if she had finally come home after a long, difficult journey. When they eventually parted, both slightly breathless, Noah rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Hannah Osborne," he whispered. "I think I have since that first night watching you sleep in my cabin, knowing you were safe." "I love you too," Hannah replied, the words feeling right and true. "Though I'm still not entirely sure how it happened so quickly," Noah smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "My mother used to say that the heart knows what it wants even when the head is still catching up." They spent the rest of the afternoon talking and planning, sharing more kisses, and simply enjoying the beauty of their surroundings and the joy of acknowledged love. As the sun began to descend toward the mountains, Noah reluctantly suggested they start back to town. "Mrs. Perkins will send out a search party if I don't have you back by supper," he said with a grin. Hannah laughed, knowing he was probably right. The boarding house mistress was protective of her charges, especially Hannah. As they rode back to Silver Creek, a comfortable silence between them, Hannah felt lighter than she had in months. The grief for her parents was still there, it would always be part of her, but now there was room for joy as well, for a future that looked brighter than she could have imagined in those dark days after the raid. "Will you come to the Thanksgiving social?" she asked as they approached the town. "It's in 2 weeks. Judge Wilson says everyone attends." "I wouldn't miss it," Noah promised, "though I should warn you I'm not much of a dancer." "Neither am I," Hannah assured him. "We can be clumsy together." When they reached the boarding house, Noah helped Hannah dismount, his hands lingering at her waist. Mrs. Perkins was nowhere to be seen, but curtains twitched in several neighboring houses. Their return had not gone unnoticed. "I suppose we've given the town something to talk about," Hannah remarked, nodding toward a particularly obvious curtain movement across the street. Noah chuckled. "Small towns run on gossip. Might as well give them something worth talking about." With that, he leaned down and kissed her briefly but thoroughly, right there on the boarding house porch. When he pulled back, Hannah was blushing but smiling. "Now you've done it," she scolded playfully. "By tomorrow morning, we'll be engaged according to the rumor mill." A serious look crossed Noah's face. "Would that be so terrible?" Hannah's breath caught. "Noah, are you?" He shook his head quickly. "Not yet, not formally, but someday soon, if you'll have me, I'd like to make that rumor true." Hannah's heart swelled with happiness. "Someday soon," she agreed. "I'd like that very much." The Thanksgiving social exceeded all of Hannah's expectations. The town hall was transformed with autumn decorations, dried corn stalks, pumpkins, and gourds arranged artfully throughout the space. Tables groaned under the weight of dishes brought by every family in the community: roasted turkeys, hams, pies of every description, vegetables prepared in a dozen different ways. Hannah had contributed an apple pie made from her mother's recipe that she had memorized years ago. It was a small connection to her past, a way of honoring her parents' memory even as she embraced her new life. Noah arrived looking more handsome than Hannah had ever seen him. Dressed in his Sunday best, a dark suit that, while not new, was well maintained and fit his broad shoulders perfectly. His hair was neatly combed, his face freshly shaved, and the admiring glances from several unmarried women in town did not escape Hannah's notice. But Noah had eyes only for her, crossing the room directly to where she stood with Mrs. Perkins and Mrs. Foster. "Miss Osborne," he greeted her formally, tipping his hat. "You look beautiful tonight." Hannah felt herself blush at the sincerity in his voice. She had worn her best dress, a dark green one that Mrs. Foster had helped her make over the past 2 weeks, insisting that the town's teacher needed something special for the social. "Thank you, Mr. Rawlins," she replied with equal formality, though her eyes conveyed a more intimate message. "You're looking quite handsome yourself." Mrs. Perkins and Mrs. Foster exchanged knowing glances, then discreetly moved away to give the couple some privacy. "Have I mentioned lately how much I love you?" Noah asked in a lower voice, offering Hannah his arm. Not since yesterday, Hannah teased, placing her hand on his sleeve. I was beginning to wonder. Noah laughed, the sound warm and rich. Well, I do, more each day if that's possible. The weeks since their picnic in the Aspen Grove had been filled with stolen moments together: Sunday rides, walks after church, occasional dinners at the hotel restaurant under Mrs. Perkins' watchful but approving eye. Their courtship, while progressing rapidly by Eastern standards, was considered quite proper by frontier norms, where life was shorter and more precarious, and happiness was seized when found. The evening progressed with feasting, music, and dancing. True to his warning, Noah was not a particularly skilled dancer, but what he lacked in grace he made up for in enthusiasm. Hannah found herself laughing more than she had in months as he twirled her around the floor, both of them more concerned with enjoying each other's company than with perfect steps. During a break in the dancing, Judge Wilson called for everyone's attention. "Friends and neighbors," he announced from his position near the musicians' platform. "As is our tradition, this is the time when we share what we're thankful for this year." One by one, community members stood to express their gratitude for good harvests, for health, for new babies, for survived illnesses. When it was Hannah's turn, she rose somewhat nervously, aware of all eyes upon her. "I'm thankful for Silver Creek," she began, her voice gaining strength as she continued. "For the welcome you've shown me, for the opportunity to teach your children, and for the chance to begin again after losing everything." She glanced at Noah, who was watching her with pride and love. "And I'm thankful for the kindness of one man who stopped to help a stranger in need, who carried me from ashes to hope." There were murmurs of approval and a few discreet wipings of eyes as Hannah sat down. Noah's hand found hers beneath the table, squeezing gently in acknowledgement of her words. When Noah's turn came, he stood tall and straight, his voice clear in the crowded room. "I'm thankful for my land, for good neighbors, and for the blessing of prosperity." He paused, his gaze finding Hannah. "But mostly, I'm thankful that my journey home took me past a burned-out ranch on that October evening, where I found not just someone to save, but someone who saved me from a loneliness I hadn't even fully recognized." The sincerity in his voice brought tears to Hannah's eyes. Around them, the townspeople exchanged glances and smiles, the romance between the rancher and the schoolteacher having become a favorite topic of local conversation. As the evening drew to a close, Noah asked Hannah to step outside with him for a moment. The night was cold but clear, stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky. Their breath formed small clouds in the chilly air. "I have something for you," Noah said, reaching into his pocket. Hannah watched curiously as he withdrew a small object and held it out to her. In the light spilling from the town hall windows, she could see it was a delicately carved wooden rose, the craftsmanship exquisite in its detail. "Noah, it's beautiful," she said, taking it carefully. "Did you make this?" He nodded, a hint of self-consciousness in his expression. "Been working on it for weeks. My father taught me whittling when I was a boy. It's not much, but it's perfect," Hannah assured him, deeply touched by the gift and the time he had invested in creating it for her. "I'll treasure it always." Noah took a deep breath, his expression growing serious. "Hannah, I know we haven't known each other long by some standards, but out here life is different, time moves differently." Hannah nodded, her heart beginning to race as she sensed what was coming. "I love you," Noah continued. "I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep next to you every night. I want to create a home with you, maybe even a family someday." He took her free hand in both of his. "Hannah Osborne, will you marry me?" Though she had been expecting the question, the reality of it still took her breath away. "Yes," she whispered, then more strongly, "Yes, Noah Rawlins, I will marry you." Noah's face lit with joy. He pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet in his enthusiasm, and kissed her thoroughly. When he set her down again, they were both breathless and laughing. "When?" he asked eagerly. "How soon can you be ready?" Hannah considered. "Christmas," she suggested. "It's only a month away, but it would give us time to prepare and—" "Christmas is perfect," Noah agreed immediately. "I can't think of a better gift than making you my wife. They returned to the social hand in hand, their happiness evident to all who saw them. When they announced their engagement, there was a chorus of congratulations and well wishes. Mrs. Perkins wiped away a tear, claiming it was just dust in her eye. Judge Wilson immediately offered to perform the ceremony, and Mrs. Foster began making plans for the wedding dress before Hannah had even had time to think about such details. The month leading up to Christmas passed in a blur of preparations. Hannah continued teaching, though her students were increasingly distracted by both the upcoming holiday and their teacher's impending nuptials. Noah divided his time between the ranch and town, working with local carpenters to add an extension to his cabin that would serve as a proper bedroom for the married couple. Hannah visited the ranch on Sundays, helping to make decisions about the cabin's improvements and bringing small touches to make it more homely: curtains for the windows, a colorful quilt for their bed, a bookshelf Noah built to hold their combined collection. On Christmas Eve, 1876, Hannah Osborne and Noah Rawlins were married in the Silver Creek Church, which was decorated with evergreen boughs and red ribbons for the holiday. Hannah wore a simple but elegant white dress that Mrs. Foster and Mrs. Perkins had labored over, with a wreath of winter berries in her hair. Noah, looking both nervous and happier than anyone had ever seen him, wore a new suit purchased specifically for the occasion. The entire town turned out for the ceremony and the celebration that followed at the town hall. There was feasting and dancing late into the night, the community coming together to honor not just the newlyweds but the season and the bonds that connected them all. When it was time for the couple to leave, they departed amid cheers and well wishes, climbing into Noah's wagon, which had been decorated with ribbons and bells by the town's children. Rusty sat proudly beside Noah on the driver's bench, wearing a red ribbon of his own around his neck. The night was clear and cold, stars brilliant overhead as they made their way to the ranch, their home now together. Hannah nestled against Noah's side, his arm around her, keeping her warm despite the winter chill. "Happy, Mrs. Rawlins?" Noah asked, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Happier than I ever thought possible again," Hannah replied honestly. "After the raid, I thought my life was over. I never imagined I could find such joy again." Noah's arm tightened around her. "I promise to spend the rest of my days trying to give you all the happiness you deserve." When they reached the ranch, Noah helped Hannah down from the wagon, then surprised her by sweeping her into his arms. "Tradition," he explained with a grin, carrying her across the threshold just as he had carried her from the ashes of her old life 2 months earlier. The cabin was warm and welcoming, a fire burning brightly in the fireplace, the improvements they had planned now complete. It was simple but comfortable, and more importantly, it was theirs. Later, as they lay together in their new bed, the sounds of the winter night around them, Hannah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the depths of tragedy to the heights of happiness, from ashes to love, from despair to hope. It had been a path she never would have chosen, but one that had led her to a life richer and more fulfilling than she could have imagined. "What are you thinking about?" Noah asked softly, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. Hannah turned to face him, reaching up to touch his beloved face. "About how sometimes the worst moment of your life can lead to the best," she replied. "About how finding you in the darkness brought me back to the light." Noah kissed her tenderly. "We found each other," he corrected. "And I plan to spend the rest of my life being grateful for that miracle." Outside, snow began to fall, covering the land in a blanket of pristine white, a new beginning for the world, just as Hannah and Noah had found their new beginning together. From the ashes of tragedy, love had grown, stronger and more enduring for the soil from which it had sprung. And in the years that followed, as their family grew with the addition of first a son and then twin daughters, as the ranch prospered and expanded, as Hannah continued teaching the growing number of children in Silver Creek, they never forgot how their story began. Each anniversary, Noah would carry Hannah to their wagon for a picnic in the aspen grove, a reminder of the day they first acknowledged their love and of the journey that had brought them together. Their love story, born in ashes and grief, blossomed into a legacy of joy and resilience that would be told in Silver Creek for generations to come, a testament to the healing power of love and the possibility of finding light even in the darkest moments of life.